My name is Patty Young. I live in Kensington, Maryland. I am a craft advocate and trained as a clinical social worker. I was weaned on American Craft Council shows through a gallery in Washington that I had a friend who was she was represented by them, and I worked for that gallery in my 20s. I think that as a social worker, what I started to understand later in life was that those of us that have had to be creative in our lives are drawn to those who make creative things. We get it. In 2007, I started traveling with the James Renwick Alliance for Craft. And my first trip was to Minneapolis. That was a thrilling experience for me to go to studios of artists and hear about how they made their wares and see other collectors and go to museums and go into the back rooms of museums and see the things that weren't on the floor and just be with like-minded others, including my mother, who was on that trip. That was the beginning of really getting involved. And from shortly after that trip, I was invited to join the James Renwick Alliance Board of Directors. And I served 6 years on that board. And then overlapping with that, I was invited to join the Board of Trustees for the American Craft Council and joined that. And then just overlapping the end of that, I joined the Craft Emergency Relief Fund Board. And my board service and my travel have been very fulfilling. That type of creativity brings me deep joy, and the learning about how things are made fascinates me. So being in the studio and talking to the artists and learning how something came to be, learning how the concept was first thought of, and then what materials went into it and what processes those materials went through till I'm looking at what I'm looking at, I'm fascinated by it. It gives me purpose, in a simplistic way. Being involved in this field gives me purpose, and it is always good to be involved in something bigger than yourself. And the craft movement is huge. And there's always something new to learn. There's always a new artist to be exposed to in this country and in others. Coming to makers as a psychotherapist, trained as a clinical social worker, for me, it's always about, okay, well, how can I make this situation better? How can I build a bridge here, as I mentioned? And for me, it's kind of my fantasy is that I am the craft chaplain. I'm a craft advocate, but more than that, because I believe I have insight into not only how groups work, but how people work. And I also have insight into left brain, right brain, and how some artists are really good at one and not the other. And so whatever support we can give them to have structures that hold them and allow them to flourish without feeling compromised, that's the goal. That's what's special and unique about being involved in craft is, getting artists to know, no, we're not telling you what to do. We want to hold you up while you can do what you do best. All of this work came in the middle of that, where I got cancer. I survived cancer. Then I had heart damage from radiation, and I survived that. And so meeting with Stony in Philadelphia again with the piece on display at the Center for Art and Wood was really a special moment because I could make the trip. I do it because I can, because it's my passion, because even though it may be a little drop in the bucket here, it does make a difference. And I do it because I appreciate where I am in the world of craft, and my modest influence means even more to some of the makers. And I don't want to waste that. I want to honor that for them and for me. just that exposure that the ACC has always upheld, that to have an award in Eileen Osborne Webb's name, to have that little inception of what she created all these years later be such a marketplace and such a place of learning about craft and for craft is just really significant.